Excellent. Well, welcome everyone to the first day of the Shape of Sound event and to the first symposium, which is part of a programme that has been organised by the MSc in Collections and Curating Practices students. And we're really, really pleased that they've managed to put this event together over 2 days, and we're really pleased to see you all here. Just before I explain a little bit about the symposium itself, a couple of housekeeping notes. We are not expecting the fire alarm to go off. We just tested it this morning, in fact. So should it go off, you can evacuate through the entrance that you came in at the back, or also through this door here as well, which will take you to the back down to the front door. Our toilets, including an accessible toilet, is on the ground floor, just kind of halfway up the corridor that you would have come up to get in here. And as just a note as well, that you might see we are recording this session, but no one in the audience should be visible on the video. It's just aimed at the speakers. If anyone does have any problems or anything with the recording, please feel free to approach one of us and we can have a chat about that. Okay, so on to this afternoon's seminar. So what we're thinking about today is visualizing sound. And we're really lucky to have 3 different speakers who are working across 3 quite different areas. And each of our speakers today will be giving us a 10-ish minute presentation, followed by a bit of a group discussion, but we'll also have 10 minutes at the end for any questions from the audience as well. So if you do have a question that pops into your mind while our speakers are talking, then please note that down and you'll get a chance to ask it at the end. So I think what I might do, if it's all right, is invite you up, Victoria, our first speaker. So our first speaker this afternoon is Victoria Evans. Victoria is a contemporary artist and a SAGSA-funded researcher based here in Scotland. She engages critically with a range of scientific and philosophical ideas and works across film, composition, creative writing and print to explore sound as a material transcorporeal agent of connection, which all sounds fascinating, Victoria, and I'm looking forward to hearing more about it. So I'll pass over to you, Victoria, if that's all right.
Thank you very much, and thank you for inviting me to the panel, and welcome to everybody. I'm really glad you gave the introduction of my research, because that was a better summary than I could give here. I'm going to try and talk today about the sort of way that I use digital methods and analog methods together in experimental ways to kind of develop my creative ideas, and in particular with a project that I'm working on at the moment, which is about visualizing sound or making tangible sound. So I've asked Laura to stop me if I go on for too long, because I'm going to try and piece together my thinking for you, and it's all still quite confused in my mind, so remember your questions. They won't be stupid questions, they'll be because I haven't explained myself properly. So in general, my research is thinking about sound, but I use a variety of media in my practice to explore the world of sound. You might have noticed that I mentioned the phonoscene. That's part of my PhD question. The phonoscene just is a way of describing the world according to sound. So the big questions in my research is like, what would happen if we kind of paid more attention to sound? And just a few assumptions that I make in my work is that sound is material. It's something that we experience not just through our ears, but through our guts, through our bones, through our flesh. It's something that literally touches us from afar in the way that it moves our bodies through vibration, and it's very connected to movement, so that's the kinetic there. I'm going to talk about a piece of work that I'm making at the moment that is connected to low-frequency whale calls and whale sound, and I'm trying to think through what these might feel like in another form that's not audio. And I'll kind of try and briefly take you through my thinking of that. And it's a print project, but as I said, I work in lots of different media. So it's just that this one seems to suit working with print. And I'll be talking about various digital and analog methods that I use together to think with. So I think of this as a way of kind of experimenting with reality. So if you use, if you can make experiments in your immediate environment, you're kind of in a kind of art lab. You know, you're sort of experimenting with reshaping reality and thinking differently about the phenomena that you're exploring. Just to give you the deep background to this work and why I got interested in whale sound, I did a residency in Madeira for 3 months in 2023, and I was working with marine scientists and on underwater acoustics and marine mammal sound in particular. There's a little 10-second taster that just gives you a flavour of what I did there. Sound is very bad, but I say it's not my fault. So I was collaborating with technologists and marine biologists who are collecting information about marine mammals calls in the Eastern Atlantic. And we made this wireless speaker together that was designed to give people an experience of hearing whale sounds like in a close-up, intimate way, but without having to go out into the water and find them, chase them down through renovation boats. And we exhibited that in a deep-sea symposium in Madeira. So just to give you a couple of little factoids about whales so that you can make sense of what I'm doing. I'm particularly interested in the blue whale, and that's because their calls are very, very powerful and very low frequency. And so therefore they kind of speak to that tactility, the way that sound can literally move us and shake us and touch us. So that's the root of my interest. Underwater, sound travels much, much faster than it does in air. And because the blue whale's calls are so powerful and that they travel very fast, it can mean that they travel for hundreds of miles, possibly thousands in the right conditions. And so when you think about this, the study of blue whales always describes them as foraging alone. They come together for mating and various other social activities, but they forage alone over vast distances for very long periods of time. But a herd is a visual concept, so it relies on us being able to see a group of animals, doesn't it? But actually, if you think sonically, taking into account the very long distances that their communications can travel, in fact, the herds, you know, they can be travelling in herds, but just in a sense that spans the globe. So this kind of I find it very interesting. I included this still just because it's from one of my favourite films, Arrival, and it talks about alien forms of communication. I'm trying to get across the idea that if you think about non-human communication, you have to think you have to think outside the box. It's not a case of decoding language, for example. Animal behaviourists tend to talk about whale sound as being more akin to music than language, for example. But you have to put yourself outside human-centred ways of thinking. So one of the ways that I developed this project was through thinking about visualising sound. Some of you may be familiar with these patterns on the left that are somatics, so the art of visualising sound through sound or dust particles on vibrating plates. And this other image is actually from a recording that I made of dolphin calls when I was in Madeira. And this is called a spectrogram, and this is very commonly used in scientific study of mammal or animal calls. And the reason for this is that there are so many sounds that animals can produce that we can't hear because either they're above the frequency range or below the frequency range that we're able to hear. So in fact, it's pointless kind of listening to hours of audio that you've recorded underwater because you won't be able to detect half the calls that you're interested in. So this here, I don't know how well you can see it, but there's a kind of wavy line going up here. That's we'll call the click burst, so the dolphins make a kind of sound. And this is a dolphin's whistle, this tick here. I don't know if you can see it. And I'm just including this slide because it's a really beautiful updating of the idea of visualizing sound, but in 3 dimensions. So this is a very new technology that it can be used on a microscopic scale in the lab. It's called a cinoscope, and they can use it to do crazy things like detect cancer in cells. So it's a way of visualizing sound in liquid on a tiny, tiny scale. So this is real. I mean, it blows my mind that this is happening. But it's got a slight tangent, sorry. I'll just play you. This is just the start of my experiments that I made when I came back from the residency, because I wanted to try and get a sort of very tangible sense of what these sound waves were doing, what they might feel like in the real world. And so I created this substance called oobleck. You might have heard of it. It's a mixture of cornflour and water. And if you put it in the well of a speaker, it does strange things. So on this one, you'll see in a second, it's kind of jumping, it's percussive, and it's actually, to the force, it actually starts jumping out of the well. And this one is more creating these frequency patterns, as you saw on the Gladney plates. Let me see if I can play this. This is the technical problems that we have. Yeah, this one is slowed down just to exaggerate the sense of how it becomes a solid object. And this is happening through sound. You know, obviously it's an impact, but it's actually created by sound. So this is sort of very interesting. I couldn't get the blue whale. I've had these recordings of blue whales that I wanted to visualize. I couldn't get them to work with these oobleck methods, so I had to try something else. And so I made a homemade laser pen visualizer. So you tape a, this is walking there. You tape a laser to point at a little mirror that's taped over a balloon, and then this cardboard tube goes over the speaker well, and if you play the sound, then you get these vibrations of the sound that's visualized in this squiggly line pattern on the wall. I won't play this because you can't hear it. But, this is yeah. Even pitched up 10 times, it's very hard to hear in here. It's not the sound making that wobble, it's my foot because I keep kicking. Anyway, the challenges of even listening to whale calls are obvious then. You can't, they're sometimes called like silent calls because they would be totally inaudible to us if we didn't have the microphone and digital technology laws here. Which feeds into this idea that this is what I use digital methods to try to see what I can't normally see, or see things a different way, or hear things that I can't normally hear and hear in a different way. What I've done here, this is the result of the laser visualizer. So this is where I got to with the experiment. So I just wanted to play with making this sound visible. But then I noticed that I couldn't, when I videoed the laser, I couldn't get my camera to pick up the smooth line that I was seeing with my eyes. It kept making these cuts in it. So when you, that hasn't worked. I wanted to be able to pause that and you would be able to see, but don't worry, struggling with this technology. But anyway, when you isolate the frames, they make different kind of glyph-like patterns. And at first I was very annoyed by the fact I couldn't recreate this video of the smooth line. But then I started thinking it was really interesting because there's a kind of truism that you can't pause a sound. As soon as you pause the recording of a sound or you stop making sound, it disappears. Whereas if you visualize it, it's a kind of way of pausing representation of that sound. So I became really interested in what this means, like little quanta of sound. And I started tracing them by hand, and then the connection with handwriting kind of came out. I was thinking, are they letters? Which way around do they go? Do they say something about the form of the sound in the water? I got interested in the idea of the sound as not being just the sound wave itself, but also being an interaction with the water and the waves in the water as well. So it's kind of just like how my brain works, and it kind of starts thinking like that. So I came up with this idea of a whale lexicon or a whale syllabary in order to make a kind of graphic notation of whale sounds, but in the sense of like trying to look closely at, well, what might these mean? What ways of thinking about it? And I kind of went this deep dive of graphic scores, and many of you may be familiar with musical graphic scores, but also some of these are dance scores, because I like this connection with movement, and I'm thinking about whether the movement of the whales affects the sound they make, etc., etc. And also various syllabaries or sign language, like this is for a tactile early version of Braille that was developed. There are various things like this is an early band notation, who's a dance theorist and choreographer, which are very similar to some of the glyphs that came out. So that might be a direction I take the project in the future, but for now it's just this print project where I'm kind of treating it like a set of syllables that will be presented in a kind of in this sort of wave-like box that you can see here that I'm printing. But the reason I've chosen this technique, which is called blind embossing, is because it references the silence of this sound, the fact that we can't normally hear it, and the tactility of the form as well. So yeah, did I do well for time?
You did excellently. That's 13 minutes.
Okay, well, I think that's enough. I'll just skip through the last ones. Okay, so that's me. But thank you for listening.
I really enjoyed that, and I'm looking forward to asking you some more questions about it later. That was excellent. I think our second speaker of this afternoon is Zuyu. Where are you? Yes. So, Zuyu is currently a master's student in Acoustics and Music Technology, and developed an interest in music composition and sound design in her free time, which is fascinating. So she's been studying music technology since 2019, and has been looking where physical modelling can be applied to East Asian instruments. So this has been kind of widely applied to Western instruments, and some of you may have heard about this, but not so much to East Asian instruments, and that's what we're going to hear about very shortly. So yeah, just give us a minute to get the PowerPoint running. Maybe it's not like okay for now. I'll have my Are you all free? Okay, pass over to you.
Hi everyone. My name is Zuyu Chen. I'm really honored to be here to present you the topic I'm going to study.
Sorry, I'm going to put this near to you because it's quite hard to hear you.
Hope you can hear me better. I'm Zuyu Chen. I'm the student in MSc of Acoustics and Music Technology program here at the University of Edinburgh. And I'm very honored to be here presenting you the topic I'm going to study for my final project. And this topic is about the physical modeling synthesis of Chinese shell flute. Okay, let's get started talking about the cultural significance of shell. So shell is more than just an instrument. It holds deep philosophical and cultural importance in Chinese history, dating back over 2,000 years, evolving from the earliest emergence in Han Dynasty to the most prominent time in Tang and Song. It has become central in Confucian, Taoist, and Buddhist practices. Its mellow, breathy tone makes it ideal for meditation, poetry, and appreciation of the nature. So the two pictures on the left panel shows the shape of the shell in Tang Dynasty and Han Dynasty, and the one in the Song Dynasty at the bottom. So you can see it quite evolves a lot in terms of its shape and geometry. And I'll talk about that further in terms of the Tang Dynasty. So let's first get a listen to how it sounds. Sorry about that, I cannot get the sound out. Yeah, but basically, the shell often played with the guqin, so they create this soundtrack of solitude and reflection. Hopefully you can find some videos later if you are interested. Yeah, so just to wrap up about the last slides, when we are talking about creating the shell digitally, we are not just replicating the sounds, we are carrying forward a cultural legacy. But despite its beauty, the shell today faces serious challenges. First, its repertoire is very limited and mostly traditional, so it's not very engaging to younger generations. And it's also difficult to play and teach with a very underrepresented library in modern sample store libraries. So my goal is to make the shell accessible, playable, and expressive through digital tools, using virtual instruments like audio plugins that we can play with digital controllers. This is about cultural inheritance through innovation, giving the shell new life in film scores, ambient soundscape, or even electronic music. So actually I placed these two videos to play, but unfortunately they cannot. So one is American in Japan. He has been studying shakuhachi, kind of like a very close relative of China's shell, which was imported to Japan in 8th century. So that's in Tang Dynasty. And the video shows he played that in a jazz ensemble. And the other one is a Japanese album from a Japanese master of shakuhachi. And also he plays the jazz standard tune Take 5. So yeah, actually this is the video. This is sound that introduced me to the instrument of shakuhachi. I know this jazz standard tune very well, but I never heard it can be played by a East Asian instrument. And it blows my mind because it utilizes all of possible expressive techniques that cannot really hear in a common Western flutes, as far as I know. Okay, so let's talk about physical modeling synthesis. What is physical modeling? Physical modeling studies the physics or acoustics of the instrument and model that with mathematical equations, and eventually we can simulate the sound with the numerical method. So it can model the various sound generating and resonant components of real or imagined objects, which means on one side of the spectrum, you can simulate, you can have a realistic simulation of natural sound quality with its complexity. Through the real-time expressive control, the parameters such as breath noise and finger vibrato, like the subtle finger movements on the tone hole of the shell. One example is from an audio modeling company. Their Swan Strings is a physics modeled orchestra virtual instrument. On the other side of the spectrum, you can expect to explore some novel sounds that go beyond the physics limitations of a real instrument. such as you can experiment with a wide range of standard settings, like to change the geometry, the size and shape of the music body, and swap with the different materials, and set a different boundary conditions like open or close on the tube, or how the strings are fixed on the violin's guitar. And also the input force, like if you want to simulate a bow strings or a plug string, something like that. An example, the most maybe common example you can find is in the Ableton Live. It's a digital audio workstation where you can make your computer music. So it has some physical modules like collision and tension. They are both model the physics of the instrument. And these are for the acoustics modeling. And there are some physical model instruments for the virtual analog. So that's the circuits, like your analog effects of a guitar and or Moog synthesizer or analog filter, something like that. And the other one is the physical audio, which is the startup created by AMT alumni, the program I'm studying with. And this company extends the physical modeling by exploring variations of the instruments, such as a prepared piano. So in a general prepared piano, all the strings are just mounted on the board. But for prepared piano, we know you can place some external objects to make it rattle. So you can simulate, now with physical audio, you can simulate digitally and create any variations you want to have for a prepared piano. It has other products I will not introduce here. So the general components pipeline would be an exciter, like how you excite the vibration by blowing and blocking, and a resonator, like the main vibration that happens in the music instrument body, and a damper, how the energy disseminates and decreases over time, and eventually will be amplified to make a louder sound. So before, to model the shell effectively, we need to compare it with other flutes, especially those that have been already studied or modeled. Let's briefly compare the shakuhachi from Japan and the Western concert flute. I think the major differences lie in the blowing edge and the tone holes. For shakuhachi and shell, they both have notched or beveled blown edge at the top end, while in a Western concert flute, it actually has an open embouchure hole on the side. And the tone holes, Western flutes have a wide range of key pads to be able to play several octaves. Well, in shakuhachi, it has 5 finger holes, and the shell is a little bit more, but it's still very confined. So how do shakuhachi and shell place different pitches given so few number of tone holes? They actually rely on the breath control, the subtle pressure of the breath input, and also maybe a little bit breath angle can affect the pitch and the variation of the pitch. And also with an open hole instead of a key pads, you can play that with half covering your fingers, half covering the holes. So it depends on the finger position and movement. With that, you can create a sliding tone, continuously sliding in the pitch to expand its microtonal possibilities. Okay. Yes, take a close look at Shao and Shakuhachi. So both Shao and Shakuhachi evolved from the ancient Chiba root. As I mentioned previously, they both evolved from the same type of instrument in Tang Dynasty from 800 years, which is called Chiba in Chinese. But over time, the shelf edge was notched from the inside, while the Shakuhachi kept an external bevel. The shell also added 2 semitone holes, bridging the gold to 8, while the Shakuhachi stayed with 5, relying on more embouchure control. In physical modeling, it means the shell emphasizes finger directions and breadth to pitch mapping, while the Shakuhachi needs more accurate modeling of head angle. So Shakuhachi can alter the pitch by tilting your head. So if you see a person play Shakuhachi and you hear the vibrato, and you probably will see tilt his head back and forth. Also, the Shakuhachi needs more accurate modeling with the edge-jet interaction and nonlinear breath turbulence. To conclude, they represent 2 different modeling challenges. One for shell is more geometric and stable, and for Shakuhachi is more fluid and nonlinear. Let's wrap up by looking at what makes modeling the shell and its relatives so complex while still interesting. For the shell, the challenges include simulating the internal notch-jet interaction, modeling partial hole coverage and subtle pitch inflections, and handling low breath pressure dynamics, which is important for its quiet tone. For the Shakuhachi, we face several challenges, such as extreme sensitivity to blowing angle, reproduction of breathy attacks, and turbulent bursts. Both require fine-grained real-time control and nonlinear acoustic simulation, which is precisely where physical modeling shines. So to conclude, the shell is a beautiful, expressive instrument with deep cultural roots and physical modeling synthesis that lets us preserve and extend its sound in new interactive ways. With the help of digital tools and possibly machine learning, which I just thought about, for some part of the very complex interaction, how the interaction with the mouth, lips, or the fingers, if the physical modeling approach is too complex, I may, and if I can find a bunch of data, that machine learning could be a good, a quick way, an easier way to approach that. Then we can keep the show relevant and inspiring for future generations of musicians. Thank you for listening. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have. Thank you.
Yeah. Otherwise, we can try again at the end. But it's always nice to hear the audio, isn't it? Yeah. Let's see.
And there's something, there's something that says
enable content. Yes, good.
What does it say?
It's just up there. Yeah, there we go. Thank you very much.
classic artistic aesthetics that I really appreciate, and I believe many people who grew up with Chinese culture, learning Chinese poetries and paintings can find many influences from this instrument. Let's see if we can play that.
Dating app. On Harmony, everyone takes the personality quiz, so you can tell straight away whether your match is a good fit. eHarmony is the app where you find someone you can be yourself with. So join today and get who gets you on eHarmony.
Fast delivery, massive entertainment. It's on Prime for $8.99 a month.
PowerPoint up first maybe, and then we'll have a smoother transition. Ah, you have your own, okay, yes. So actually some of you may have seen Hal's work when you came in. If you went past the education room, your eye might have been caught by a very attractive audio-visual display that is in the education room. If you didn't see that on your way up, then we would highly recommend that you go and have a look after this talk. And also, I meant to say as well, Victoria, But Victoria also currently has work on display in the Talbot Rice Gallery. I don't know if any of you have been there before, but they have an exhibition on at the moment called Trading Zones, where you can find some of. And is that the work you talked about, Victoria?
No, that's the work in progress. It's a sound composition in the
Okay.
round room.
Okay, brilliant. So another recommendation as well for you to check out after the symposium. So Hal, our last speaker, is an interactive audiovisual composer and a multimedia artist, and is a researcher here at the University of Edinburgh in sound design, with a special interest in interactive audiovisual composition. So I'm going to pass over to you to tell us more. Is that okay?
Thank you. Thank you.
We can hear you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Chenghao Xu, and I am currently pursuing a PhD in creative music practice in University of Edinburgh. And it is a great pleasure to be here today to share my research on morphological synchresis as a structural mapping framework for real-time audiovisual composition. And this approach builds on existing concepts from spectral morphology and synchresis, redefining how sound and visuals can be structurally interconnected in real-time audiovisual composition. Instead of relying on direct parameter mapping, such as linking brightness to volume or pitch to color, morphological synchresis provides a systematic method for ensuring structural coherence between audio and visual over time. So this real-time interactive audiovisual installation was designed based on this approach, and is currently being displayed downstairs. So to extend this approach, I will first introduce spectral morphology, which serves as a foundation for structuring audiovisual composition. Spectral morphology was introduced by Dennis Smalley in 1986. It is a framework for analyzing how sound evolves over time through spectral, timbre-based, and morphological, shape-based transformations. It allows us to understand how sounds develop, interact, and shape perceptual experience through motion-based processes. So since motion is a shared perceptual attribute between sound and visuals, spectral morphology can be extended beyond electroacoustic composition to audiovisual composition. It provides a structured way to synchronize dynamic transformation in both mediums. For example, Smalley's concept of spiral motion in sound, which involves rotational and spiraling spectral transformation, has clear visual counterparts, such as swirling line visuals. This suggests that sound and visuals can share a unified compositional logic, not just simple correspondence. So here's the example of sound. And the visuals. So this brings us to the concept of synchresis, which serves as the perceptual foundation of audiovisual fusion. Synchresis is a term created by Michel Schill, refers to the perceptual fusion of sound and image when they occur simultaneously, even if no intrinsic causal relationship exists. However, traditional synchresis is often treated as a passive perceptual effect, a byproduct of simultaneous audiovisual events. It does not account for the underlying structures that govern audiovisual cohesion over time. And to address these limitations, I propose morphological synthesis, which redefines synthesis as an active compositional principle rather than just a perceptual effect. There are three key features of morphological synthesis. And the first is it embeds synthesis within the compositional process, ensuring that sound and visuals evolve together following shared motion-based structures. And second, instead of simple one-to-one parameter mapping, for example, pitch to color, it employs higher level motion patterns such as expansion, contraction, or cyclic motion to create a more expressive and structurally integrated audio-visual relationship. And third, this method is particularly relevant for generative and interactive audiovisual systems, where structural coherence must emerge dynamically rather than rely on prescripted synchronization. So most conventional audiovisual composition approaches rely on direct parameter mapping. For instance, they often link frequency to color or brightness to volume, or use MIDI events to trigger audio and visual events at the same time. While this method works well for real-time interaction, they lack a systematic framework to reinforce perceptual synthesis beyond this basic correspondence. So here are some examples. This one uses audio amplitude to control the visual scales. And these two are my former works, and I use amplitude, audio amplitude to control the camera position change on that one, and I use the amplitude to control the material change of this one. In this work, I use the MIDI events to trigger both audio and visual content at the same time. Morphological synchresis offers an alternative by establishing a structured relationship between sound and visuals. It's based on shared motion patterns rather than relying solely on isolated parameters. So to turn this theoretical framework into a practical tool, I developed Motion Shaper, a real-time audiovisual composition system built in MaxMSP. Motion Shaper ensures that both audio and visuals follow motion-based structures, creating cohesive and dynamically interconnected audiovisual designs. Rather than depending on one-to-one parameter mapping, Motion Shaper uses structural mapping, an approach inspired by cognitive science structure mapping theory. This method ensures that sound and visuals share the same underlying logic, even if their intermediate transformations differ. The core mechanisms of Motion Shaper revolves around motion as the primary linking factor between sound and visuals. It employs motion envelopes as dynamic control mechanism to shape the evolution of the audiovisual experience, For example, a sine wave motion envelope might control both oscillation in pitch and the cyclic movement of visual elements. And a synth motion envelope could increase the oscillation speed of sound while simultaneously accelerating the cyclic movement speed of visuals over time. And similarly, a descent motion envelope might gradually attenuate sound amplitude and visual opacity, providing a unified without impact. And notably, this structural mapping doesn't require an identical number of motion envelopes in both mediums. For instance, in max MSP, creating a vortex motion might involve multiple motion envelopes such as oscillation, ascent, and descent. But in Unreal Engine, a single vortex force parameter could achieve the same perceived motion. In my design, visual motion shaper corresponds to specific Unreal Engine blueprints, which contains visual programming logic. But it can also be used with other visual design platforms through Open Sound Control Protocol. And this is the audio motion shaper, and these two are two visual motion shaper, which corresponds to different blueprints in Unreal Engine. And this is what it looks like when those two platforms are running. I plan to expand this system in two key areas, technical enhancement and creative extensions. For technical enhancement, I'm working on a standalone hardware implementation using Raspberry Pi and Cycling 74's Rainbow framework, which will reduce dependency on external computing resources. Additionally, I'm developing a version that integrates with Ableton Live, functioning within a digital audio workstation to control synthesis and sound design tools. On the creative and compositional side, I am to enhance the system with special audio processing, incorporating multi-channel audio techniques for greater perceptual immersion. I also plan to extend the framework to VR environments, enabling users to interact with audio-visual composition in immersive environments. And these developments will refine the methodology and expand its creative possibilities.